I believe that we derive more knowledge from the senses than from all books together.
It's been over 300 years since the first visitors enjoyed the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh. Since then, millions have come. Most people come simply to relax, others to study at this internationally famous centre for plant research. The status and focus of this great institution was largely the vision of one remarkable man. His name was John Hope. Hope lived in Edinburgh in the 18th century during the Scottish Enlightenment, that period in Scotland's history when this small country became a hothouse of brilliant thoughts and ideas.
Hope was definitely a Scottish Enlightenment figure. It was the time of the polymath where you could still be an expert in several subjects, and he truly was.
Great strides were made in almost every discipline. Edinburgh was crowded with men of genius.
Hope was really a very important part of the Enlightenment. He was a practicing doctor. He had an academic appointment as the Professor of Materia Medica and Botany, and he finished his career as President of the Royal College of Physicians of Edinburgh.
In the 18th century, botany was an integral part of the study of medicine. Plants were specially grown for their medicinal properties in physic gardens. John Hope was the keeper of Edinburgh's two historic physic gardens. But there was a problem.
Physic gardens were generally related to universities, and they were the places where medical students would go to learn about plants and medical practice.
They were running out of space, so they had amassed over 1,800 plants at the old site so they needed a much larger site, and also a site that was away from the growing pollution of the city.
It is either a new garden favoured by appropriate size, situation, soil and financial support, or the end to botany in Scotland.
John Hope was never a botanist to let the grass grow under his feet. Hope had an ambitious plan. He would create an entirely new type of garden beyond the city wall. In 1763, he purchased a 5-acre plot of land on the road from Edinburgh to Leith.
Hope essentially combined two gardens, one that was near Holyrood and one which stands where Waverley Station is now.
The Leith Walk Garden was more of a botanic garden. John Hope himself was more interested in botany. He mainly lectured on botany. He used the garden for that purpose. So it's a move towards botany as a subject in its own right.
The design of this new garden was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. There was not a right angle to be seen.
John Hope was hugely ambitious about the garden. Not only did he make sure it became the foremost teaching institution, he also was very, very interested in the aesthetic appeal of the garden. And he chose a very, very bold layout because the majority of the garden is actually informal.
With its meandering paths and informal plan, the Leith Walk Garden was unique and in complete contrast to the rigid straight lines of every other garden of the time. It was a romantic landscape, but with an underlying scientific purpose.
Classification was a big 18th century thing. Hope was very involved in propagating the ideas of the Swedish naturalist and botanist Carl Linnaeus.
In his new Leith Walk Garden, Hope showcased Linnaeus's revolutionary plant classification system. To stock the new garden with exotic plants, he called on his extensive network of international contacts.
Botanic gardens, such as the Leith Walk Garden, provided a place that new plants could be grown. Captain Cook's voyages are bringing back all kinds of interesting plants. Hope's Botanic Garden could grow these plants and see whether they were economically viable. It was all part of building up the nation's economy. Plants are very much an important part of that.
John Hope put all his considerable energy into making the new garden a success. He was breaking new ground, but he didn't actually do the digging. It was his team of gardeners, including head gardeners John Williamson and Malcolm McCoig, who put his plans into action. In the new garden, the medicinal plants were not forgotten.
Rhubarb was seen as a medicinal plant. It was a special variety of rhubarb, Rheum palmatum. Seeds were smuggled out of Russia. Hope was one of the first to get the seeds, which he was really keen to cultivate in the Leith Walk garden. It was very popular, and after being grown in Edinburgh, it started to be grown all over Britain.
For the garden to have a long-term future, Hope knew it was vital to secure funding. He never missed an opportunity to promote it to the great and the good.
John Hope was very lucky and he already had a relationship with Lord Bute. Lord Bute was very powerful, he was a botanist in his own right, and he had the ear of the king, and he was Prime Minister for around a year. And during that very small window, John Hope petitioned Parliament and managed to get the money to set up the Leith Walk Garden.
The Leith Walk Garden flourished. It became one of the very first Royal Botanic Gardens, attracting visitors and scholars from far and wide.
The taste for natural history is now universal, and particularly for the study of botany.
With the creation of the new Leith Walk Garden, John Hope transformed the teaching of botany. He took his students out of the classroom and into the garden to see botany in action.
John Hope was probably the first person in the medical faculty, at least in Britain, to just focus on botany for his teaching. And the garden itself was a scientific space. It can be seen as an outdoor laboratory.
Hope's lectures, we understand, were held in the upper room of the Botanic Cottage. John Hope's teaching style could best be described as multimedia. He used images, he used the plants in the garden themselves, and he used herbarium specimens. Here is a specimen that was actually collected by Hope in the Leith Walk Garden, and we know because it's got Hope's handwriting on it.
Hope devised a whole new range of visual teaching aids. Nothing like this had ever been done before. He showed he had ideas well ahead of his time by employing the daughter of his head gardener as a botanical illustrator, work that was traditionally done by men. Agnes Williamson produced illustrations like this one for his lectures.
John Hope's method of teaching botany was very cutting edge for the time. As well as bringing plants in, he also did experiments, and the course he was teaching was probably one of the most up-to-date and cutting edge of that period.
Hope's insatiable curiosity about plants led him to collaborate in pioneering botanical experiments. He shone a light on plants and turned their world upside down. This was to understand the effect of light and gravity on plants. John Hope's legacy is not written in books. It's in the generations of botanists he inspired. He taught 1,800 students in all. No less than 21 became professors. It was an age of discovery, and many of his students travelled around the globe advancing the new subject of botany. In the 1820s, the Royal Botanic Garden Edinburgh was on the move again, from Leith Walk to its present site at Inverleith.
We have one extraordinary survivor, the sable palm, and it actually came from the Leith Walk Botanic Garden, and it was growing in the hothouse there.
If John Hope walked around now, he'd be surprised to see his botanic cottage, partly because it's in a whole different location to where it started out. So we can see a continuation from John Hope's time to the Royal Botanic Gardens of Edinburgh today, and it's still a place of research, of teaching, of garden visiting. You can still come and see something novel as well as learn about it.
John Hope, as a teacher, a leader and a visionary, planted the seed which has grown into the present Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh.
The prosperity of the Botanic Garden has been one of my favourite objects in life.